Hello sim racers, welcome to Friday's Live. Tonight we are going to do a little bit of theory. I want to show you some of the new stuff that we did for version 1.6 of Assetto Corsa Competizione. I should have done this live stream quite a bit of a couple of weeks ago, but one thing and another thing and some races and then my eyes and everything, so I didn't have the chance to do it. But now it's the correct time, so yeah, let's do it. So, how are you doing, guys? Everybody is good? All good on at the chat? Right, okay, we're doing fine. Great. Okay, so where to start from? As you know, with Assetto Corsa Competizione 1.6, we introduced not only the 2020 DLC, that obviously includes Imola and the two new Evo cars, the Mercedes and the Ferrari. But as usual, we also introduced some improvements to the whole simulator. And from my side, I've worked on some improvements on the tire model that by now you all have feel and understood pretty much how it works. Some improvements in the aerodynamics, and also some extra improvements on the wetness of the road. Let's start with the tire model. So what did we did on the tire model? I believe and I hope that everybody has already tried it by now and you like it. But what is the differences that you feel on the tire model? To do that, we are obviously going to do some of our typical design schemes and graphs tonight. So let's see what we can do. Okay. So let me get to our usual drawing web application, and yeah, let's go. Okay. All right. So many people here. Nice. Okay, so let me open this one that I have prepared for you. Right, so the first thing I want to tell you is the changes we did on the realignment forces of the tires. And obviously to tell you about that, I have to explain you a little bit what is a realignment force of the tire and how it works, which I think it will be also interesting because you're going to have a look on how the modern tire models of your racing simulators work, you know, at the core of the tire modeling. So nice, thank you, Foxy. Really glad that you managed to see the Porsche setup guide and you liked it. All right, so the realignment forces. Let's start with that. Okay. Let me first see the chat and how you guys are doing, and then we start with this. So I see so many people here already. Wow, 270, and keep going up. So thank you so much, guys. Even though tonight we're not going to race a lot or drive a lot, but yeah. La telemetria è esportata su Ray Studio. Dici su AIM? È probabile, non mi ricordo se Assetto Corsa salva anche su AIM. Male che vada potresti salvare su Motec, esportare come CSV e poi importare su AIM, però darò un'occhiata. Ace, yes, of course we will do even more circuit walks, absolutely. Why the Porsche is so difficult at Imola? Yeah. It's a hard circuit for the Porsche. Anyway, okay, realignment forces. How are we gonna explain this, what it is, and why you feel the differences when you are driving? All right, so this is our tire. Okay, this is our tire, and we are looking at the tire from above. The direction of movement is towards the up of your screen. Okay, and as I said, we are looking at the tire from above. Now, when we rotate the tire, okay, so when we rotate the tire like this, okay, as you know, we generate a slippage from the direction of travel, and that slippage generates a lateral force that make your car turn. Now, this is pretty much, you know that it's simplistic, but it's easy to understand, and I believe nobody has problems to understand this. Where this force is generated? Well, ideally, the tire has a footprint. Okay, so this oval here, let's say, is the part where the tire touches the road. Okay, and again, ideally, when we steer our tires, the tire, in theory, should rotate into a pivot. Okay, so let's say for simplicity sakes that this pivot is at the center of the footprint. Okay. Great. So when we do this, let me show you like that. So when we rotate the tire, as I said, the ideal footprint again rotates, and the pivot is the same, the center pivot, and we get a lateral force which eventually will start to turn the car into the directions that we are rotating the tire. Easy, simple, no big deal. Okay, now here comes the interesting stuff. Okay, right, so let me erase some of that, actually hide, so that we can concentrate on small things. So as we said, the footprint ideally should be just an oval, or maybe kind of rectangle with rounded edges. That would be. But in reality, the footprint of the tire is far than a simple oval. Okay? So the footprint when you are driving like this is, first of all, it is dynamic. It changes, and for small rotations, for small angles, and now the angle here is exaggerated. Okay, we are talking about small angles like 1, 2, 3 degrees of slip. Okay, 2, 3 degrees of slip. The footprint that touches the ground is practically not sliding at all at the front, but sliding a lot at the rear. So it's like, because like if the tire flexes, but it flexes not, as you know, laterally. Okay, I'm not talking about the lateral. I'm talking, again, we are looking at the tire from the top, okay, or from the bottom, even better, and we see the footprint of the tire, and the actual footprint that touches the ground flexes while you're trying to rotate the tire. Okay, it's like having your fingers, okay, touching a surface, and then you rotate, and you can see that something remains straight and something still starts to flex and rotates differently. All right, so what happens now? Because the footprint is not at all symmetric and centered on the pivot of rotation, it means that all this footprint will generate a lateral force, but obviously the lateral force is not generated exactly at the pivot of rotation, because, as I said, the footprint goes behind, and so you get a lateral force that is generated somewhere behind the pivot of rotation. Okay? Now this is very important here. So as you can see, the lateral force that the tire generates is not exactly at the pivot of rotation, the axis of rotation, but it is generated behind the axis of rotation. Okay? Now, why is this so important? Because obviously we rotate the tire into this center. Okay, so here let's make it red. Okay, but the forces applied here on the white, which means that between those 2 points you have a lever. Okay, you have a lever where you rotate here, but the forces are applied here. Okay? While what is happening? When you have something like that, so you apply a force into a lever, you generate a torque. You generate a torque, which obviously wants to rotate also not only the car, but wants to rotate the actual tire. So what we are doing here is that we get this whole tire from straight like this, and we try to rotate it. Okay? Great. Once we rotate it, it generates lateral force. But as I said, the lateral force here is not at the center of rotation, but it is a little bit behind. So it generates a lever. And that means that it generates a alignment torque and tries, as you can see, to counter-rotate the tire back to the straight. So this force here, this torque actually, it's not a force, it's a torque, generated by the lateral force, because it doesn't act exactly at the pivot of rotation, it wants to rotate back the tire like this. Okay? So is this clear for you? Now, this torque is the alignment torque. Okay? And this is actually what happens and your tire wants to go back. Okay? This is, we're talking still without suspension geometry. So we just have an axis over the tire, okay, and nothing else. So let's suppose that we don't have cambers, we don't have casters, we don't have anything. All right. So that means that if you release your steering wheel, your tires, because they are generating lateral force, they also generate an alignment torque, and they will want to go back into straight again. This is what you feel. It's not exactly, we will talk about that again, but generally this is what tries to rotate the steering wheel back, and the wheels rotating straight again and go straight. All right. Καλησπέρα Γιώργο. Okay, so I hope it's clear until now. It shouldn't be that difficult to understand what is happening. Now, here's the magic that happens with tires, okay? Here's the magic that happens with tires. So as I said, this is the direction. So what happens if we rotate the wheel a lot? So if we try to do something like this, okay? So again, this is exaggerated because I remind you that this kind of rotation I'm talking about and this kind of alignment torque happens at the first 1, 2, 3 degrees, okay? Right. So, sì Duque, faremo anche in italiano, possibilmente faremo lo stesso in italiano un altro giorno. So what happens if we try to rotate the steering wheel a lot, and so the tire rotates a lot and it generates a lot of slip? So we're talking something way over 6, 8, 10 degrees of slippage, okay? All right. So, again, we have our pivot, so this is the center of rotation. Now, here's what happens. The footprint does not remain exactly like here, but because we have generated so much slippage, as I told you before, it's not just the rear end of the footprint that slides. All of the footprint starts to slide because we are asking way too much. So the whole footprint of the tire starts to slide a lot, okay? So when that happens, the footprint becomes longer or at least the part of the footprint that slides, is longer now. So this means that the force comes closer to our pivot. Okay, so let me do this again. The red, let's make it red again, is the pivot, as here. Now, the generation of the force, let me show you, it has become closer to the pivot. Why is that? Because the generation of the lateral force is again at the center of the whole footprint. Because the whole footprint now is longer, it slides longer, the whole footprint generates lateral force, and the center starts to come closer again to the center of rotation of the whole tire. What that means? It means that our lever is much smaller. Okay? And because it is smaller, the realignment torque is less. Okay, so here's what happens. Okay? When you rotate, when you try to turn a little bit with your steering wheel, you generate a lot of lateral force, but only the rear end of the footprint slides. And so this asymmetrical in the longitudinal axis part of the force generation creates a long lever, and that creates a pretty high alignment torque, which wants to rotate back your steering wheel and the tires towards the straight. If you generate a lot of steering, if your steering input is wide and you generate a lot of steering on the wheels and a lot of slippage, then the whole footprint starts to slide. Okay, and when this happens and the whole footprint starts to slide, obviously the center of the footprint is closer to the center of rotation, and that generates, even if you generate the same lateral force, smaller lever means smaller alignment torque. And as you said in the chat, this might be the understeer effect. So you turn lots of force on the steering wheel, and then you turn more, and the steering wheel becomes softer, becomes less stiff, less strong. Okay, this is exactly the reason. This is the reason why that is happening. Okay, so as you can think, it's the footprint of the tire is very dynamic. It doesn't remain static. Even if you already knew that the footprint flexes, it doesn't flex up and down, left and right, and that's it. No, it actually flexes in multiple ways. It's like honestly, I couldn't find how to explain you how actually the footprint flexes. So yeah, this is not linear with grip, okay, as Tortellini said, and we will talk about that in a minute. But it is very important to understand that even if we generate the same amount of lateral force, okay, so let's suppose that we can generate the same amount of lateral force, okay, the actual placement of where that lateral force is generated and how long it is from the rotating axis of the steering axis of the wheel, okay, generates a lever, and that lever changes the amount of alignment torque that it is created. Okay, so I know it becomes a little bit more complex here to understand, but this is how it happened. Yes, Sotiris, but I didn't have, δεν είχα πλαστελίνη. I didn't have, how you call it in English, goo, whatever. Anyway. Joe, very good, very good intervention here. This is we don't even have caster here. We are talking about no caster at all, okay? It's like having zero caster. And that's why you should understand this a lot better, okay? So let's move ahead and see what happens even at farther and wider slip pads angles. So here it is, and it's quite interesting. So if you keep on doing what you're doing, okay, and let me show you again the pivot as red. So if you keep doing what you're doing, the front of the tire, and you keep asking more and more and more slippage from the tires, you keep rotating and you keep steering even more, okay? So practically, this is again our center of rotation. The footprint of the tire is going to slip so much that actually it's going to start slipping just with the front part of the footprint, and that much slippage will actually bring the generation of the lateral force ahead of the rotation, the axis of rotation, right? The steering axis. And that means if you have the generation of the force ahead of the steering axis, your lever is going to be at the front, which means that again you're going to generate some alignment torque, but it's going to be on the opposite. It's not, again, I remind you, this is how it goes until now. Okay, so it was rotating counterclockwise into our example. So it tries to rotate back the wheel and make it go straight. And if you ask too much, it's going to be the lateral force is going to be generated ahead of the rotating axis, and the alignment torque is going to be generated clockwise in this example. Obviously, we are steering towards right. Which means that not only your tire will not want to go back straight, but it will want to go to rotate even more. Okay, so this is why maybe you might remember some older sims at some point they had that issue that you would, steer the steering wheel, and the steering wheel will become so light, and at some point it will become completely, not only completely without any force, but actually it will try to make you steer even more. Okay. Now, that wasn't that the simulator had any issues. Probably the car that was simulating has so little caster that the alignment torque, or even zero caster, or sometimes this happens also with front-wheel drive cars that have even negative caster, or the other way around. And that makes your steering wheel go into the turn even more. Okay? So here's what happens and how the alignment torque is generated, right? Now, again, I remind you, this is all without having any caster, any camber, anything. We are just talking a very single and simple rotating axis, completely vertical to the tire. Okay. Now, this doesn't happen like that in real life suspensions, but we do this simplification to understand how it works. Okay. So this is what happens. Why is this important to us, and how that compares to the lateral force and the other forces that you feel from the tire? Now, as you remember, guys, this is practically how tires pretty much generate force. So practically, you start rotating your steering wheel, and the more you turn your wheels, the more angle of slippage you generate. And the tires that we are simulating have a actually they start generating grip, and at some point, at some slip edge, at some angle of slip, they will generate the peak grip they can generate. If you ask more than that, then they will start generate less and less and less grip, and then at some point they flatten out the curve and nothing happens. They just generate a flat grip, whatever you do with the steering wheel. All right? Great. Again, it's very important. Most of you already know this. If you don't know, I remind you, the tires that we're simulating, the Pirelli tires for the GT3 cars, have a very, very narrow slip angle. They generate their maximum grip at around 5 degrees, okay? So that is why you need to give very limited steering inputs. If you overdo it, you start having less grip and no sort of sensation from the wheel. Okay. I remind you again that road tires usually have a much wider slip angle, so you can have a good semi-slick or good rod tire that generates the peak of the slip at around 9-8 degrees, somewhere around there. And generally, as you can see, it's much smoother and you can play around much better, because with a rod tire you have all this space to play with, and you still generate grip, and the car still feels whatever you tell them to do. While with a slick tire like the ones we use on the GT3 tires, you have much more narrow space to play with the grip, so you have to find the grip and then move a little bit. You cannot do that because that it will generate worse grip. So you have to move the steering wheel less to feel the grip and to generate the proper grip. All right. So the GT4 tires are similar to the GT3 tires, but they can generate a little bit wider, like 6 degrees, and there is not such a high peak like that. It's a little bit more smoother, but they're still slick tires, so it's certainly not like the street tires. Okay, so this is what happens with our slick tires. What is happening with the realignment force that we just explained? Well, here's the interesting thing. As I told you, the realignment force achieves its peak force, its peak torque. Sorry, it's a torque, not a force. Let me also control this. So this is torque here, not force. It's very important to know what we're saying. So the realignment force, as I said, achieves its peak torque, its peak value, at much less slip angle, like 1, 2, 3 degrees, and then goes down. Okay, and as we described practically on the pages before, the more slip you give, the more goes down. So let's see what kind of graph generates. Okay, so here it is. Here's the graph of the realignment. It's the blue one. All right. So as you can see, it's very interesting because the maximum torque is generated much sooner than the peak. This is why sometimes you might feel that you have the maximum force from your steering wheel, but even if you give it a little bit extra, you gain more grip. Okay, the car turns more, the car reacts. So you turn your wheel, you have instant lots of force, because as you can see, instantly it generates a lot of torque, okay? And then when you think that you have arrived at the limit, you give it a little bit more, like 1, 2, 3 degrees, okay, depending on the tire, and the car still generates more lateral grip, because at the peak of the alignment torque, you are not yet at the peak of the tire lateral grip or longitudinal grip, but we're talking about lateral grip. So that's very important, and that's number one. But as you keep asking for more and more and more, you go into this part of the lateral grip, and the realignment torque goes down, 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 and it becomes even negative. Why? Because we explained it. It starts to be generated at the front of the tire and takes your steering wheel and moves it, towards the turn. All right? Excellent. Now, all that is great and good. I hope that you have understood everything. What that has to do with version 1.6. Didn't we simulated realignment torque before? Yes, we did. No problems. But we are talking about very small degrees here that make the difference. So you can understand that if you move half a degree this torque back and forth, or back and forth like that, half a degree, already it makes quite a bit of a difference. Okay, so in what kind of feelings you are going to feel here. So even having some extra data and managing to play a little bit left and right, it will give you a different feeling. And that's one. And then there is something more important. Now, usually we show this kind of graphs together for the lateral force and the realignment torque. But in reality, the realignment torque is something like this. It's really, really minimal. Why it is like that? Because we are talking about, yes, of course we have, as I said here, of course we have a big lateral force, but the amount of the length of the lever that is created here are millimeters. We have exaggerated the whole footprint, but in reality, the footprint is some centimeters, and obviously the center of the footprint moves some millimeters back and forth. So we are talking about a very, very small lever. So even if you have a very big number of the force, the lever that you're going to, multiply it is extremely small, So the realignment force is by itself really, really, really small. Okay. On top of that, you add the actual alignment of the suspension, especially the caster, and this thing becomes, from that, it becomes something that it is, completely, let me show you if I can, something that becomes almost completely flat, something like this, right? Because the caster, obviously, it's going to exaggerate the lever, takes the forces and the torque from the footprint of the tire, and then it leverages everything into the suspension geometry. So completely different. Right. Again, you might ask, all right, if all that happens, then why we feel the difference? Well, here's the interesting thing, because as I said many times, we have practically gone away from the era where, tire modeling and a couple of values in the tire modeling would make the simulator. All the modern sims have so many parameters that even very, very small details make quite a difference, and all together make a difference in feeling. So moving this curve a little bit like that, a little bit like this, finding the correct data, finding some errors that we had, and readjusting everything again makes a difference in the steering wheel feel. But most importantly, there are some situations where you have, for example, the let's do it like that. So there are some situations that you might have let me paint this green. Okay. So you are steering with your steering wheels and you are moving into this curve, right? And you might be here somewhere. Okay. Now, here's the problem. if you have a realignment force that looks something like this, okay, realignment torque, sorry, it means that your tire here already starts to slip, right? Starts to slide. It loses grip. Okay, so let's say that this is not the front tire anymore, but it is the rear tire, right? And so your tire here starts to lose grip, and you are moving somewhere around here, okay? And by moving somewhere around here, your rear end starts to slide and you start having some oversteer. Now, the more the rear end starts to slide, the more the torque, the realignment torque, starts to go down, and it might even go negative, depending on what values you're using. We are talking about small values, but it's still a torque, and you are just right on the limit. Anything, even a little bit of extra wind, okay, can provoke the car to slide even more. And so if you have an important alignment torque, and it goes into negative, that means that this torque will help the tire slide even more. Okay, but if on the other hand, instead of having this kind of torque, okay, you have improved your numbers and it turns out that the torque is a little bit less, and maybe it's a little bit also different. Okay, so maybe it's something like that. Small changes. We're not talking something big, small changes. That means that, okay, the tire might still want to slide, but the speed of change in torque and in lateral force of that tire will also change. And that might give you, the driver, the extra time to react. And this is the change that we have in 1.6. So we are talking about insignificant, really insignificant differences in values, like nothing, okay, in values of the realignment torque. But it gives you just a tiny bit of extra time to react. And that extra time is the difference between 1.5 version of Assetto Corsa, when a oversteer would start, you had to be extremely fast, and that would make you also less, because when you are very fast, it will make you less precise, and the car will do strange, movements, or you will simply lose it at medium to slow speeds. And in 1.6, the car starts to slide. You can be more precise with your counter steering, and the car will still stay there, and you can catch it and catch it back and move on. The same also happens during understeer. You go into the turn, you start having some understeer, so you move around here. Let me actually make this also here. Okay. Now before that, it will go here, and it will start having even more, understeer. You wouldn't even realize it, but it will make the car understeer even more. Right, but now instead it stays somewhere around here, okay, and that means that you can play a little bit and still feel some extra grip. So this is practically what happens now with the realignment course. Some extremely small changes, extremely small differences in a couple of variations, specifically in the realignment torque, and actually I gave this to the beta testers, and I told them nothing about that, and told them, you know what, you might have something new in the tire model, but you might not. Try it, let me know what you feel. The guys got back and, oh my god, everything has changed, what is this, incredible, here and there, and what is happening? I was like, guys, you're all at the big placebo, because, okay, yes, I can feel the changes, I like them a lot, but when you know what you have done, and you know that the changes are small, you feel the changes, they are subtle, it's not day and night, and you know that the changes are small in the values, so you extra convince yourself that, no big deal, it's cool, very nice, I like it, we made a step forward, but, it's not a completely different stuff. But for someone that didn't know the changes, it was like, oh, this is amazing, this is fantastic. And I was like, guys, you are in full placebo. I haven't changed so many things. No, this is so much better. So, yes, of course, James, everything is affected by low sensitivity, but let's not even go into there because otherwise we're going to lose our minds. So I'm trying to keep everything as simple as possible to explain what's happening. But the conclusion here is modern tire models, Assetto Corsa, Racing, Factor 2, whatever, are so complex that even tiny differences could make a hell of a difference in experience, in feel, in improvement. And it's a constant research, development, tries, experiments. So, yeah. And yes, of course, Lucas, otherwise we wouldn't do it. It's not like we take, a couple of values and, okay, let's see what the dice will give us 5. Let's put 5 there. You get the data, you try to find out what is happening. Some things work, some things doesn't work. So even on the data that you don't have, you try to go and do reverse engineering and so on. Hello, David, how you doing, man? Yeah, big man. So this is what happened actually in the tire model. We didn't stop there. We had some improvements also on how the rolling resistance is affected by the tire pressure. Let me see if I can show you this. Maybe I have to duplicate that. All right, so let's go here and eliminate here and eliminate here, and those stuff we don't need this. So yeah, go. Because I wanted also to show you what happens in the rolling resistance and tire pressure and grip, of course. All right, so where was I? Slick tire, here it is. Okay, so probably we don't even need this. Let's do it free, like that. So practically, until now, we had, so let's say that this is the pressure. Okay, so you go up with the pressure from here, and this is what happens to the rolling resistance with pressure. So you had something like this. Actually, no, like this. Oops, sorry. Like this, okay. Okay, let me change the color here. Okay, and make it a little bit like that. So obviously, imagine that this is completely straight. Actually, I should have done it straight, but anyway. Yeah, let me do it straight, sorry. So, plonk and plonk. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so this is our rolling resistance, which means that the less pressure you have, okay, the more rolling resistance you have to the tires. That's pretty much straightforward. At some point you have the optimal pressure here, okay, let's say that the optimal pressure is somewhere around here, okay, which give you a certain amount of rolling resistance. And obviously here you have the best grip, so you want to be somewhere around here because that will give you a decent rolling resistance and the best possible lateral and longitudinal grip. Cool, no problems. But if you keep raising the pressure, then the rolling resistance would keep going lower and lower and lower, so you had less and less and less rolling resistance. Nice. Okay. Now obviously that wasn't correct. So what is happening now is that this thing changes in something like that. Okay, let's put it like this so that we can show something nice. Okay, something like that. So this is now our new model in terms of, let's make it blue, which is more exciting. This is now our new model, practically. Why is that better? Because obviously it's not like you are gonna raise the rolling resistance to infinity, the pressure to infinity. You're gonna have a balloon and the rolling resistance will magically go down to zero. That never happens. Okay, at some point the tire, by the way, slick tires, which also have a big adhesive component, so they do stick to the ground. Okay, at some point you gain a little bit of less rolling resistance, but then it flattens out slowly and you don't gain too much. And the same happens when you lower the pressure. At some point it's not like it's gonna go up to infinity. Okay, now why is this important? Because some of the aliens, with the first system, they would exploit the tire pressure. They would give as much downforce as they could on the car, all right? And they would raise the tire pressure as high as they could manage it. Somewhere around here, let's make this orange, okay? And that what would mean? Would mean that with lots of downforce, they would gain the lateral grid that they were missing because they had higher pressures, okay? But they could counter exploit the high drag from the high downforce because the rolling resistance would go very low. Okay, so they would be fast on the straights, good grip from the high downforce, even though the drag was high enough. This is not cheating, this is exploitation. They tried, and they find out a way to, go over what we thought would be realistic, and they would use something not realistic. Luckily, with this kind of model here, they cannot do it anymore. So this is why some of the old setups that you might have get from some aliens, and that you might have seen if you guys have found older setups, that they are made to work with 28.5, 29 psi of pressure. Nowadays with 1.6 doesn't work anymore. The car slides around. Why? Because you're losing the grip. You get lots of drag. You cannot go fast anymore. Now, obviously, together with that, we didn't stop just to the rolling resistance, but as you know, the size, the area of the footprint changes with the pressure, right? And you get the optimal footprint and other characteristics of the tire with the correct pressure. So this usually is something like that, let's say. Okay, so this we don't need this anymore, and we can also eliminate this and this. Okay, and this obviously was already something like this. Okay, so practically you have your footprint that becomes ideal on around the correct pressure. Okay, extra data, a little bit of talking with the engineers, turns out that this is correct, but it needs to be a little harder. Okay, so now this is why when you have now with 1.6 you have your tires that are cold, you slide more, you have more problems. Why? Because now you have something like this, you see, so when you go outside the pressures, you start having more issues. Again, there is fine tuning to be made, but this is what is happening now. Okay, so all of this together bring a new dimension to the tire modeling and the sensations that you get, and obviously the performance of the cars. So you need to be more precise even though with the pressures, even though the new tire model lets you work more with the tire. Okay, so with your steering inputs, you can do more, you can ask from the car more, the car will give you more support, and so on and so on. Okay, so this happens to all the tires, being 2018, 2019 tires, or the new 2020 tires. This happens with everything. And this is what is going on with the tires. So let's go and do a couple of laps and see also what extra things the new tires, the differences between the old tires and the 2020 tires. So the tire model is the same for all the tires and affects in similar ways all the tires. But as you know, now we have the old compound and the new compound. Let's go back to the game and see what we can do. All right, so in game. All right. Okay, guys, is it all clear until now? Did I sound too boring? Yeah, okay. So, I want to go back again to the... yeah, practice is good, okay. I want to go back to the Zandvoort that I just did the last race this week, by the way. Ναι, εγώ είμαι Μπάμπης, αυτός είμαι. And I will take again the Lamborghini, which, by the way, you know, guys, that it is a pretty hard car to the, especially the rear tires. And ciao, Graziano. And let's raise a little bit the temperature. So let's go high, hot weather. Okay. Okay, so let's go in. And I want to show you a couple of things. So this is now is 2019 Zandi, 2019 tires, all right? Let's go get our usual setup that we used during the race. Should be this one, I think. Okay. And 36 degrees, 43 Celsius. Let's go down by 3 here. Probably we'll need even more, but okay, 3 is good enough. We're just going to do a couple of laps. Thanks, Walter. Yes, Zan, everything we talk about until now is generic to the whole tire model, so it applies everywhere, to old tire compound, new compound, everywhere. Okay. Let's do a couple of laps. The letters usually are T is for A is for ambient temperature and the number. Hey, David! Oh, come on, man. Are you crazy? Oh, man, I need to give you so many beers when we meet. Thank you so much, mate. Cheers. So A is for ambient temperature, and the T is for track temperature, and then just a number of the setup. And usually I follow with R for race, or Q for qualifying, or wet, something like that. So as you can see, the tires are already going up, and they slide a little bit, but you see I can still cut easier a situation like that. Oh, you don't hear it, sorry. You should be able to hear it now. Okay, it's arriving. Don't go crazy. Professional YouTuber here. Don't worry. So for example, in this turn, when your tires are in good now in good temperature and pressure, you can get almost flat out. Again, you see, you can go off the brakes with no problems. The tire still works well and supports you. Let's push a little bit so we can get everything up to temperature. Aero model later. Here is the aero model. We'll talk about this later. Yeah, because I didn't update the actual version today, and got too late, so I didn't update it. So as you can see, this is a pretty good setup that I made for the last race. So it's pretty neutral and behaves quite well. But still, if you do 3 or 4 laps, you know that what will happen with the tires as usual. The rear tires will go off their qualifying grip first, and the front tires will still be on the qualifying grip, so I will get some extra oversteer on the car. So let's see what is going to happen, and let's see what kind of temperatures we're going to have at the end of the lap 4 or 5. Whoop. For now, still the car slides a little bit because everything is overheating, obviously, but, you know, still controllable. Well, still reading that out way too much, but it's okay now. We're not trying to do fast lap times. We just want to drive around like that. I want to arrive to 3rd or 4th lap and see what will happen. The pressure is the most important thing. At least, obviously, in these tires. There are other tires from other manufacturers, different series, that the temperature is also very important, but the Pirelli in particular are very good by the fact that, you know, even at high temperatures or low temperatures, they still work decently. But the pressure is the most important thing, because the pressure is what keeps the footprint area as big as possible, and what keeps the sidewalls stiff enough, and generally, you know, let the tire stick to the ground. So the pressure is very, very important. So we are 3rd lap now. You should start having some issues maybe at the end of the next lap, probably. See? Whoop. Bit too wide. Yeah, I'm not driving really well now, but as I said, it's not the problem here now. We don't need to be fast. We just need to understand what is happening. Okay, first lap, so something will start to change now. Whoop. Oh, here it is. Ah, you saw? Hey, Gary, thank you so much, mate. Thanks. Did you saw, guys, the... whoops. Did you saw the... Oh, sorry about that. You saw the oversteer there. That was the start of the problems. So the rear tires are now off their qualifying grip. The front tires are still on the qualifying grip, so the car starts to become... Here again. Ooh! Now, that was... Okay, so I don't think we need it anymore. It's pretty evident that the car already at the fourth lap starts to, you see, oversteer, and again over here, oversteer again. So when you are doing a setup for a car, as usual, you'll know that by now, you really need to keep in mind that at some point of the race, the grip between the front and the rear tires will change, depending on what tires the car is consuming first. And so the handling of the car and the balance of the car will also change. So you have to keep that in mind and make the appropriate changes to the setup, to your steer, to your driving style, and so on and so on. Okay. Now, that happens with the 2019 tires. We can also go here and check that we were like 123 degrees, probably somewhere around 95 on the inner one, 105 degrees on the front. Okay, that gives us an idea. Okay, so let's go back now, and this time we go into 2020 circuit, which will give us automatically the new compound of Pirelli, the DHE. Okay, let's go there. Okay, so same setup. Where is it? Number 8. Okay, identical. We don't choose again. We go down by 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, by the way, an easy way to understand in what kind of truck you are. Just go and check your maximum camber, especially at the rear. If the maximum camber you can get on a GT3 car at the rear is maximum negative camber, is not more than minus 3.5, so this is the maximum negative camber you can get, then you are in 2020. If you can go over that, then by 99% of the times you are at 2019 or 2018. And you have obviously the old tire. Okay. Let's go back again. Do our usual 3-4 laps. It's both the temperature and the pressure that is causing loss of grip. I don't know if you know, Gary, that also the tire wear is different and it's not linear. Maybe we can show that again. So let's see what will happen now with the new tire. See, I also have a little bit better traction with these tires. One of its characteristics is an improved traction out of the turns. Sorry. Okay, so first lap is done. Have you noticed that we still are at 27.4 at the rear? It's going to go up, but it's not already that high as before. I can't read the chat into this into this track. It's impossible. Oh, come on, Czech Beta, mate. We don't have a Greek restaurant here in my town. I'm suffering. See, we are still at 27.9. We haven't even go up to 28. Now, finally, at the end of the second lap, 28 psi. Look at the support the new tire gives me at the rear end. Look at the rear pressures. They're going up, but it's not exploding like before. So as you can see, this tire improves also tire heating generation. And the car is more stable, more traction out of it. Frederick, no, around 27.5.6 is optimal for all the circuits, all the tires, all the seasons. This is where you see again 28 now. This is where Pirelli says the tires should handle better. But you know, depending on the driving style of the car, you might need a little bit more or a bit less. It's not an exact number, it's a range where you have to stay close. Gt4 keeps the same tire compound as before. There are some small differences on the realignment torque over there, but there are less because the actual data from the Gt4 is what and the new tire is what they kept us going back to the old GT3 tires to improve generically the tire model. Look at how this tire maintains a better handling. You see, it maintains its characteristics in a better way. PG, yeah, I mean, it depends. 28 could be a little bit too high, but on some circuits might work very well. Look at that again. Back down to 28.1. So the 2020 new compound improves in controlling the heat generation, even at very difficult conditions like that. Obviously, the fact that Pirelli asks to not go over minus 3.5 camber also helps. And now we are at the 4th lap, and we will see what will happen while our tires are, getting worn out. Will they go the rear ones down of the qualifying grip? What is going to happen? Am I going to have again oversteer, or is the tire more stable? Stability and consistency. A little bit of oversteer here, but nothing too high. Let's see on the next lap. So let's do also a 5th lap and see what happens. Very, very stable car. Even if I'm driving bad, I'm not driving properly, still very stable. Nice. You see, even now that I have completely went over the breaking point, still the car stable, no big deal. And we are on the 5th lap, no problems. Okay, so why is this? Why is this happening? Let's have a look. Let's go back to the drawing board, right? Okay. Actually, let me stop this because otherwise it's gonna be too noisy. So let's go back. Okay, so for the guys that don't remember or haven't watched our older videos about how tire wear works, let me explain you a little bit. So, as you know, in Assetto Corsa Competizione, we are actually simulating the tire depth of the tread. And we have 3 millimeters when your tires is at, so let's see, 1, 2, 3 millimeters depth. Okay, we are somewhere around here. Okay, so you start a little bit the grip at 3 millimeters that is generated is maximum like that. Okay, and then normally it should go down. This is what pretty much happens. But in Assetto Corsa Competizione is a little bit more complex than that. It's not just a single curve like this. Okay, so let me change this to something like, okay, green, and now let's do a new one. Okay, so let's say I will just put it down here to just show you what happens. So practically, you have an initial part where the tire still, has to scrub out all the slippery patina, whatever that is new. Then it goes for 2-3 laps, depending also on the circuit. That gives you the maximum qualifying grip. Then it goes down in an important way, and then starts to lose, grip in a somewhat linear, let's say. It's not that simple, but it gives you an idea of what is happening. So, again, you start with a tiny bit less grip, you do half a lap or 1 lap, and you go up to the maximum grip, which should stay for 2 or 3 laps. Again, depends on the circuit. Some circuits might be even 4 laps. Some other circuits might be just 2 laps, and so on. Okay. Then it just climbs down of the qualifying grip, as we call it. And what happens is this. So you might have your front tires and your rear tires, okay, like that. So this is the front tires, this is the rear tires. And you start racing, okay. And because let's say you have the Lamborghini, which has a lot of weight at the rear, and needs a lot of traction and grip at the rear, you start going close to the end of the qualifying grip, like this. Okay, this is the rear one. Now, because obviously, as we said, the rear of the car is heavier, it has more downforce, everything, it tends to consume the rear tires sooner. And so at some point you will find yourself that the rear tires are here, and on the contrary, the front tires are here. When this happens, okay, obviously the front tires have more grip, the rear tires have much less grip, and the balance of the car starts to become more oversteery. So that might be, the setup that you have might be fine for qualifying, but if you want to do a proper race, you want to counteract this. So you either want some stuff on the setup that will try to consume the front tires faster, okay, so those two things, the two consumptions get closer. Or at least, even if you cannot do this, because it's not easy, you want a setup that starts a little bit understeery, and when the car arrives here, it becomes more oversteery, but actually what it does, it makes the car more neutral. Okay, so this is what happens in Assetto Corsa and actually in the real Pirelli tires 2018, 2019. Now, the new Pirelli tire, the 2020, starts again a little bit slower, gets the optimal grip, but then the step from the qualifying is much less important, and it also loses grip in a more linear, more stable way. So what it happens with the 2020 tire here, let's make this green again. Okay, the 2020 tire, let me also write it so that people can see 2020 DHE, oops, E, like that. And those, on the other hand, are 2018 and 19 DHD2. Okay. GS President, thanks, mate. All right. So, as we said, with the DHE tire for the 2020, you don't have that step, so you can have a qualifying setup and a race setup that they are closer together, and you also have a tire that behaves better in heat generation, behaves better in consumption. The tire per se does not have more grip, maybe a tiny bit, as we said, better traction, but it really is nothing. It doesn't really generate more grip, but the grip that generates, it's more stable, it suffers even less the temperature changes and the overheating, and it has improved consumption. You can easily make a 60 minutes, 65 minute stint with the 2020 DHE tire. So this is what happens with the new tire. And actually, let's go even on the garage here and have a look at the temperatures, and here you can see they are like 10 degrees lower on everywhere. The tires are 10 degrees lower on everywhere, even though we did more laps on them. All right, so this is all about the new tire model. We also said a couple of things like the tire consumption that was happening on already on the old tire model, but this is it. So let me know, guys, if you liked it. Give me some questions I can answer. Zan Gabriel says, did the Lambo get more or less BOP for 2020? Yes, as usual. I think they left it pretty much the same in pretty much all the tracks. Maybe in a couple of tracks it got some extra 5 kilos. The big difference was between the 2018 and 2019. They added a lot of ballast. For 2020 they kept almost the same ballast from 2019 in most of the circuits. Yeah. M4 GT3 when? I don't know. I will need glasses, big nose. The rear brake duct has less effect on tire cooling now. Not really either, but on the 2020 tire, because it handles better tire heat generation, probably you feel like that, and it's not that the brake duct doesn't generate heat, but it's less than that. It can handle it better. The Evo is faster. The 488 Evo is faster. Most importantly, it's angrier. The engine is really angry. The PSI delta. Well, if you're doing advanced setups, you should go in the telemetry and find out how the pressure changes during every turn and adjust accordingly to improve or make the car worse depending on the turn. We are doing basic setups here where you just control your pressures at the start-finish line. But if you want to do it properly, you do good laps, you go in the telemetry and you check what is happening in every single turn, and you can, adjust the pressure specifically for every turn. Strengths and weakness the Honda has. It has a good engine on some of the circuits, but it has a lot of turbo lag. That's the main problem. A bit of not so good electronics and lots of turbo lag. That's the problem with the Honda mainly. What do I think about the Bentley? I don't know, guys. I mean, those are unfortunately, choices of the teams. PS4 rollout, I don't know when this thing, but I think early next year. Which car do I drive? I usually try to find a car that people do not use a lot, so to give them, an incentive to use the cars, because unfortunately Sim Racer, actually we have Niels here, and he's watching, at least I saw him watching before. And here's the interesting thing. Niels appeared on our preview event of Imola and drove the BMW M6, which is a great car. We all know it's not the fastest car, but it is a great car. And he won, actually. Why? Because he is Niels, and he can do it, okay? And surprise, surprise, if you go around the servers, public or not, of Assetto Corsa Competizione, you will now see many more people, sim racers, driving the BMW because they think that now is the best car, because they saw an alien, winning with this. So that gives you an idea how sim racers are influenced by the very fast drivers. They see a very fast driver winning with a car, and almost automatically in their minds it's like, okay, if I have to have some better chances in the race, I have to get that car. That's why we had so many sim racers using the Porsche. The Porsche, for the average sim racer, even for the good sim racer, is a very tricky and difficult car to drive into a race. But because the aliens were winning with it, everybody was using the Porsche because it was the fastest car. It wasn't. You could use a different car, which would be probably much easier. And we're talking about people that, they're not in the race to win always. They are trying to do a podium at best, or maybe top 10. You could do much easier top 10 with a more simple to drive car. But no, everybody Porsche because, aliens win with the Porsche. So that's what I do. I try to pick cars that usually people do not use, and I think they are interesting, to give them some incentives that they can, drive that car. And that's why in the last races I drove the Huracan, because I think that it's a car that people have forgotten to drive. It is still, even though it's very heavy, it is still, from the ballast, it is still a very fast car, and especially with the new tire model and the new 2020 tires, it's even better than before. Yeah. A rule of thumb, I think it's like 0.3, 0.4 every 10 degrees, something like that. Maybe Niels can confirm that. I don't remember, to be honest. I think it's something like that. Just, rule of thumb, as you said, generic. It's not exactly that. It also depends a lot on the circuit. But yeah. I don't think Lexus is still the monster in rain. I think if you tried other cars, they should be closer now. Okay, so this was about the tires. If you guys still interested, we could also do we could talk a little bit about the aero improvements that we have. So let me know if you want to hear about that. And it's easier, it's less. I just have to show you the same graph that I did and explain to you on the forums, and then maybe give you a proper demonstration here. Okay, so let's have a look at the aero then. Nice. Back here. All right. Let's go back. Where were we? The aero. Okay. The aerodynamic improvements we made with version 1.6 are all about the loss of downforce and aero efficiency with the yaw of the car. So what that means? Obviously, when you are turning into a turn, as we said, your tires have some slip angle, which means that you are not traveling at the exact direction of travel, but the whole car, because your rear tires are also slipping and sliding, okay, the whole car is rotated by a yaw angle. Again, here is exaggerated. It's not that much, of course. If it is that much, it's already a moderate slide, okay, especially for GT3 cars. But it does have a yaw angle, and turns out that modern wing elements and design are taking into account this kind of angle. Thank you so much, Lupo. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it. I wish, guys, this whole pandemic ends. We can meet everybody in some circuit, and we can get some beers. Possibly I can offer, since you are supporting me so good. Thank you so much. Tortellini, shut up. Let me explain first. So as I said, the new, the modern aerodynamics take into account a tiny bit of yaw angle, because they know that the cars turning, they have an extra yaw angle, they have an extra rotation. And usually, most modern aerodynamics get even better, or at least do not lose any efficiency at all, at a small degree of extra rotation. So if you are having 1, 2, 3 degrees of yaw angle, you are not losing any efficiency at all. Obviously, you can understand that the more rotation you have on the car, the more yaw angle you get, and the more the wings start to not generate enough enough downforce. Boki, thanks, mate. Thank you so much, guys. What is tonight? Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And the easiest way to understand this is that obviously, if there is this yaw angle here, okay, and you have something like that. Whoops. Let me rotate this. Sorry, guys. Like this, okay, and we don't need that stuff here because I want to show you. All right, very good. Okay, so this is the speed of wind, right? Now you understand that the moment the car is rotated as it is, the actual wing doesn't get the whole speed of the wind over. Why? Because it is rotated, so it's gonna get less, okay? And the more you rotate, the less speed you get. And obviously, with less speed on the wing, you generate less downforce. Up to a point that you are so turned down that the wing might even start to stall because of the many dirty air that gets. And you're gonna lose even more downforce because of that, more aerodynamic efficiency. All right. Did we simulate that until now? Yes, we did. Even from Assetto Corsa 1, we simulate this. And until now, what was happening was, in Assetto Corsa 1 and Assetto Corsa Competizione, was that by every step of rotation, you would lose more and more and more aerodynamic efficiency. Of course, I had the values to decide how much aerodynamic efficiency I would lose, okay? But obviously, you had to do some compromises. Why is that? Because if you wanted to lose a lot of aerodynamic efficiency at high angles, you had to put values that it would make you lose like even more at even small rotation, okay? And that wasn't good because it would mean that as soon as you would rotate towards the turn, and you wouldn't even sliding, you would just, making the turn, you would lose so much downforce that it wasn't correct, and the car would become unstable, or you had to do other things, so it wasn't correct. So you had to compromise and take this, like that, and and make something like this curve that we have here, which means that you lose not enough downforce, but good enough to have an effect that it is possible to understand to the driver. Movie, guys, thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. So, as we said, the old model was a compromise again. And something that was always bothering me is that to have the car behave good enough in small rotations like this, you had to lose so little downforce that at very high speed and high yaw angle, it was easier to drift. That happens pretty much in many simulators, especially older ones. The higher the speed, the easier it was to catch a drift. It was easier. Okay, so that was something that simply wasn't acceptable for me. It was bothering me since since the Grand Prix Legends forever. So I didn't like it. Thank you, guys. Thank you. You're so good. So that was the compromise, of course, because obviously at some point you have to decide and say, okay, when it happens that a GT3 car or a Formula car or whatever goes to 15 degrees yaw angle. It doesn't happen at every turn, right? So better have a good behavior at the small angles and then just become too easy at higher drifts. Thanks, Tomek. Oh man, guys, thank you so much, guys. I wish I had a beer here to just cheer you, but so water. So thank you so much, guys. So as I said, it was a compromise. You had to, close your nose and say, okay, I'll deal with it. The important stuff is when you are, racing properly, and if it's too easy at high speeds, it's okay. Now, with 1.6, we went into that with Fernando, of course. Oh man, guys, what are you doing tonight? Come on, thank you, Alistar. Thank you so much, man. Thanks, guys. So, practically, with Fernando, we tried to understand what to do, and we managed to make a better simulation on this stuff with a better equation. And so for small, as you can see for the new model, for small degrees, actually you're not losing any more downforce. Okay, you're not losing downforce at all. And as what happens next is, as the rotation, gets wider and wider and more important, you start losing a lot. So as you can see here, after the initial rotation, you go way down the old model, and you lose lots of downforce here. And this is what happens now in Assetto Corsa Competizione. So again, not enough data. We're still fine-tuning. We're still trying to get it as realistic as possible. But I think we're already in a pretty cool situation. So let's go back to the game and have some demonstration about that. So again, I'm going to use the same setup. No big deal. Let me at least make the car a little bit, less heavy. Okay. And let's do a couple of laps and see what happens. Even if we get the traction control down to 0. All right? Okay, so small speeds. Right? Okay, yeah. Cold tires, of course. Important thing. You have to know, most of you already know, that cold tires in Assetto Corsa Competizione also change the slip angle of the tire. So the tire becomes even angrier and more difficult to drive when it's cold. So we have to get a little bit of extra heat up. But again, you see, you can control it, no big deal. It's still difficult. Okay, it's not an easy thing. There's still very stiff cars, there's still slick tires that are difficult. There's still lots of downforce even at slow speeds. But it is easier than before and more controllable. See? Third gear, 120 kilometers. Still can't control that. Again. You see? You can control this. 100 kilometers. Still, this is a high speed. So, and it is a rear engine car. And we don't have enough lock on those cars. They don't have enough lock to deal with oversteer. But we can do it. Giro's delivery, yeah. Okay? All right. Now let's try to do a couple of slow turns again in similar way. And then on the very fast downhill, let's try to, overdo it and see what happens. Hard, but manageable. Oh, too fast. Oh, too much. Okay. This is also cambered. I mean, it's never too easy. And obviously you have more success with a front engine car. But still, I mean, you get it. It's still manageable. Let's go into a fast turn. Okay, let's try it here. Did you see the slap tanks that I had to do? I had to really try hard and still wasn't able to control the car. Why is that? Because the speed is higher. And the higher the speed, still we're talking about 150 kilometers per hour, 140. It's not like, you know, extremely high speed, but it's still high speed, okay? So it's the higher the speed, the more difficult it is to control the oversteer, and even if you control it, you're losing so much time that it's not worth it. We will also come back to that. The not worth it is not, you know, something that I say lightly. I will get back to that in a minute, because there was still exploitation with this too. Okay, so 140. Let's go back again to the downhill. Hello, Camille. Okay. Fast bends, 200 kilometers, 220. Impossible. Just, you see how fast it starts. Then, obviously, once the whole car is rotated, the vertical wings, you know, the vertical wings try to stop the rotation. This is also simulated, but you are already half spun, so it's not like you can save the car. The rotation maybe stops a little bit, slows down, but the car is already gone. Look again the replay from the outside. Here we are. Well, so in it goes and boom, instant rotation. There's no way to catch the car. No way. Full opposite lock. No way to catch the car. This is where the aerodynamic loss of downforce, the aerodynamic loss because of the yaw is happening. And obviously, this is why on some turns like, you know, Blanchimont of Spa, you might don't want to have an extremely oversteer setup, because at some situations, some conditions, the car, you will feel the car starting to, you know, squirm and move around, and it becomes almost scary, which is a pretty nice feeling. So yeah, this is practically the whole new aero model. It's a basic difference, but it makes a good difference. And as I said, again, here we had some exploitation from some aliens that were able to make setups, I think especially for the Porsche, they would go into the turn, rotate the car a lot, and then go in a pretty important drift. It wasn't enormous, but it was a pretty important drift, and getting the car out with as much traction as possible. Now it's harder, it's more difficult. You cannot exploit so wide-angle drifts anymore. It's just not possible, at least not in medium to high fast turns. Well, the center of pressure moves back and forth dynamically, automatically. What it changes is what Tortellini says. As you can see, the cars also have the vertical fins on the wings. Those vertical fins are like a wall. When you start spinning and rotating, they generate tons of torque that tries to stop the rotation of the car. And as you can see, there is a reason why they are so back. Obviously also to straighten the flow of the aero and everything, all that complex stuff, but they also add stability to the cars, especially when they start going into a yaw rotation. So this is why you see the cars spinning, and at some point they're not stopping exactly, but they do slow down. Mauricio, not really on the maps, because those cars are made to go fast. They don't care to control the throttle to be able to drift more. Okay. No, not at least we don't have any plans right now for the updated Zandvoort track on us. It just doesn't make sense for us right now, economically, logistically, and COVID, everything. So anyway, so this was about the area. I don't remember anything else. Yeah, that's mainly the thing. The initial understeer of the 488 Evo. I don't know. I wouldn't say that. That might be one personal opinion or preferences. I don't know. Gary Smith, softer or harder suspension do not give more grip. Now this is again what I'm going to tell you. I have talked about that in other videos. I think it's important if you go and find them. I will say this again very fast. It is a very simplistic explanation. It's not like this, but it is an explanation that helps me understand, and I always find it very helpful. It might help you also to understand what happens with the car handling. Stiffer front or rear axis, okay, being that from anti-roll bars, springs, dampers, whatever. A stiffer axis doesn't have less grip than a softer axis, okay, but it transfers the load faster or slower, okay. So a stiffer axis will transfer the load left or right faster, and that will make that axis turn and react faster and with more precision. But since they react faster and the whole load is transferred much faster, they will also go over the limit of the grip faster. So they will lose grip sooner. Okay? A softer axis will shift the load slower. Why is that? Because while you're turning, for example, the car starts to roll, okay, if it's softer, it will roll slower, whoop, okay, while a stiffer axis will roll less but faster, the load, because once the roll is stopped, the whole load is already transferred, okay, so tuck, that's it. And as I said, the softer axis will transfer the load slower, and because of that, it will be a little bit more sloppy, it will react slower, but it will also go over the grip later. So if you have a stiffer axis at the front and a softer axis at the rear, for example, that means that the front will go over the grip if you keep on trying, to achieve more grip. It will go over the grip and it will start slide sooner than the rear, which means you're going to get understeer. If you have a stiffer rear and a softer front, then the rear will go over the grip sooner, again if you're still trying to rotate the car, and that means that the rear end will slide sooner and the car will be oversteered. Again, this is a very, very simplistic explanation. It helps you mentally, but it is very simplistic because on top of that, you have to understand how dampers work, how the aerodynamics might work, how the actual suspension geometry might work. So if you say it like that to a proper race engineer, it will tell you you are talking bullshit, almost, because it's much more complex than that. But it is something that, at least personally and to whoever I have explained it, it seems to help you mentally to visualize what happens. Because saying that stiffer has less grip than softer, that's wrong. That's completely wrong. Okay. But saying that stiffer is faster in exchanging the load, and so it loses grip sooner, not it has less grip, but it loses grip sooner. If you keep doing what you're doing, that's better as an explanation. Highly start, drive more precisely. There's no other way around. But yes, you need again, you need many different things. You need better aero, you need more. I mean, again, do you really want it to be less snappy? It depends. Plus the differential, yes, of course, Mauricio. Okay, final thing I want to show you today. I want to show you some differences we made on the wetness of the road. Okay? What do you think is the next thing at Tortellini? Tortellini tonight spams the chat. We will ban you. What's the next thing I would like to work in ACC physics? I would like to do some extra stuff on the bump stops maybe. But I think we are arriving at a point that maybe the frequency is too low for some things. Even more electronics could be handy. But again, it depends. Some things are easier or just arrive to you with extra data and you just go in and do it. Other things are not so easy and you need to think a lot, and maybe you have some solutions, but probably you cannot put them on the title that you're working, because you will have to redo the all the cars, for example. So it's going to be a big problem. So sometimes you arrive at a solution, you say, okay, let me, take this and save it for whatever next title, or whenever we have lots of time to redo everything. No, not for the foreseeable future. No plans for underfloor damage. It's not easy, yeah. No, it has a lot of weight at the rear. It has a very wild turbo lag and peaky engine, and all that, consume the tires. I'm talking about the NSX. I could look a little bit on the throttle response of the engines. That could be a nice thing to work, probably. Okay, so wetness and stuff like that. Let's go back. Return to garage. Confirm. Okay. So, yeah, the tire pressures as before, so 27.4 to 28 maybe. This is where this is a range where the GT3 tires feel good about. Gt4 tires are a little bit lower, like 26.7 to 27.4, something like that. No, come on, guys. Let me talk about the wetness of the road. Otherwise, it's gonna be really late. No, Diego, because changing the tires is a power user future. You have to understand that this is still a game that needs to be played by everybody, and everybody means that until they have learned the mechanics of the game, if they go every time in the circuit and they have the same tires, the tires will be so consumed that they will not understand what is going on. So that is why the tires are getting changed every time you go back to the garage. And if you are a power user, you know about that, you've learned about that, and you go back and you select the same tire. All right, so let me talk about the weather. So as you know, the circuit right now is optimum, which means that we have a very good rubbered line. Okay, right. So the more dark part of the circuit here that you can see here is when many cars are lapping the circuit, all right, and they deposit rubber on the circuit because, as you know, the asphalt is rough and it has microscopic. It's not flat, it's not smooth, okay, and what happens is lap after lap, lap after lap with tires. The tires deposit, as they get worn, they deposit rubber on that rough surface of the asphalt, which means that when you go over the rubbered line with your tires, it's like having extra grip because you have rubber on rubber and not anymore rubber on asphalt. Okay, so you gain some extra grip, and as you know, this rubbered line is, of course, changes dynamically in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Unfortunately, not the shape of the line. We are not able to do that. That would be very nice, but we cannot do that in Assetto Corsa Competizione. But at least it changes dynamically with the number of laps and the number of cars that they keep lapping in the circuit. All right. So, what happens when it rains? Well, when it rains, when it starts raining, this rubber is made obviously from oil, from petroleums, from, it's synthetic. And the rain starts to dissolve the rubber, and that makes the racing line very, very slippery. All right? Now, this is why you see some of the real-life drivers, they try to start braking outside of the racing line. And some of them go as far as to go on the outside of the turn and not go to the apex to avoid the rubbered line, the racing line. Many sim racers have accused Assetto Corsa Competizione that it doesn't do that. In reality, we already did that, and I have already made a video about that. It's in Too Long Didn't, or Didn't Know, or Too Long Didn't Watch. But the problem was that from the moment that it started to rain, okay, in Assetto Corsa Competizione, it would make the rubber line much more slippery than the outside of the racing line. So the racing line would have more grip. The outside of the racing line would have more grip than the racing line. But in 2, 3, 4 laps, the rain would have washed out the rubber, and the whole circuit would have come back to almost green conditions. Plus, the many cars lapping would have made the racing line a little bit more dry, and that would make the racing line better to use. So you would be faster. After the initial 2 laps maybe of rain, you would be faster using again the racing line. So most of the people wouldn't even, realize that. They wouldn't even try to go outside the racing line. 2 laps would go away, and then from the 3rd or the 4th lap, everything would be faster on the racing line. That was an issue. So, in version 1.6, the time needed to clean the rubber line is much, much longer. You might need more than 10 laps, depending on how much rain it is, because the more rain, the sooner the rubber line will be cleaned up. But even with, you know, tons of very, very strong rain, you still need 8 to 10 laps or maybe 12 laps to start cleaning the rubber line. So you have more laps to understand that, okay, you know, the racing line doesn't work so well, and to start experimenting different driving lines. Now, we still have to say some stuff about that. Most people think that, oh my God, it rains, that means I have to, you know, I have to be here when I'm braking, okay? And then inside the turn, I have to be here, okay? No. Even if you go and watch real races, the differences are not that important. So usually what you want to do is, this is your braking racing line, you want to be somewhere around here, okay? Then you go into the turn, you have to obviously go in. Instead of going over the apex like this, it's better if you go half the car outside the racing line and you stay somewhere like that, okay? And then maybe do a V on the racing line and try to exit not here outside on the curb and on the racing line, but again a little bit on the inside so that you gain more traction. This is the correct wet line. You don't have to exaggerate. You don't have to, oh my God, I have to use a completely different line and I will be faster. You won't be faster, it's impossible. Okay, because still the geometric line is better, it's faster. And still there will be turns like this one, for example. What are you going to do here? Are you really going to go here and then here? No, you're going to be slower. In this turn, you still have to do the proper racing line. It's going to be slippery, you have to be very careful, but it's going to be faster. In this kind of turn, for example, you can stay outside, go in for an early apex, go outside here, okay? Stay a little bit outside again. Sorry, I have to move the mouse like this. And then at the exit, do not go wide on the right, but stay closer to the center of the road, so you get more traction. This is what you have to do. So, let's try it, okay? Oh yes, you certainly feel the difference by wet rubber and wet paint. Wet paint is always, you know, death. So let's try it, because it happens to have here a special version of Assetto Corsa Competizione, which permits me to do special stuff like dev hacks. Oh look, it rains instantly. So now we have let's go to 2, okay. Now we have a racing line, rubbered, and it starts to rain. And let's make this pretty high rain. Okay, okay, this is pretty high rain like that. And in less than a lap, we should start having problems. So let's see what is going to happen. Oh, already we're on slicks, of course, and we have issues. You see how the car here has some grip, okay? On the next lap, I'm gonna go to the rubber line and see what happens. Yes, of course, we're gonna turn the lights on. Again, brake a little bit outside, go in, you can feel it slips and then goes in again, you see? Brake, a little bit on the outside, not so much. Here, obviously, I completely lost the car. Okay, here, braking. Oh, I've lost, sorry, my bad, my bad. Ooh, ooh. Let's go and get the wet tires. Yeah. Wet tires here, where are we? Here we are, wet tires. All right. At least we stay on the road. So if I stay on the wet line, you see how it's really slippery here. Listen to the traction control. You see it's so slippery on the racing line, okay? But if I do the same thing, but stay a little bit on the outside, again, T1, you see that it is easier to control the car. So, let's go in, brake here, just a little bit wider, you see? It's easier. Obviously, I had to cross the racing line. Here it's going to be very slippery, so I have to be very careful, you see? Very, very careful. A little bit on the outside, it's easier. Crossing the racing line and go into the center of the road. Traction. Racing line, very slippery. Racing line, very, very slippery. Oh my God. Okay? A little bit outside of the racing line, still can control the car. All right? So, this is what we did. That was already present in Assetto Corsa Competizione 1.5, 1.4 since the beginning. But as I said, it would clear in 2-3 laps, and also, especially if you were into a race, the car's lapping would dry a little bit also the racing line, and that would make it faster. Now with 1.6, the rubber stays there for much longer time, so you still have to understand, is it worth it? Should I go a little bit outside? So hopefully this will make more people trying to find more grip, okay? Again, don't expect that instantly you go here on the outside and you will be faster than the one that is on the inside. But, for example, you go into a braking zone like this, here, and you try to defend, maybe, and if you are outside the racing line like this, you will be able to brake later than the guy that it is on the racing line. Or maybe you are attacking, and you go outside, you might be able to brake better. That until the whole rubber is cleaned up and you start having a dry line. The dry line, again, whoever goes on the dry line is much safer and has more grip. Whoa. Oh, look at that. That was really bad. You saw that just instant spin. And I'm on wet tires, right? Obviously I have very low traction control, but still you can understand how much slippery it is when heavy rain comes down and the track is still very, very rubbered, all right? So, yeah. This is it. Hope you liked it. This is it for tonight. I don't know if you guys have some questions that you might want to ask me. I'll be glad to reply. No, Lucas, it doesn't stay like that in real life. There is something else that happens in real life track that we do not simulate it, but that again doesn't happen in all the tracks. So some tracks have an older asphalt, okay, that doesn't drain the rain so much, and that becomes even slippier, more slippery. And that obviously stays for a long time, okay? So that stays for a long time, stays even for the whole day. But that doesn't happen in all the tracks. Spa, for example, is one of the tracks that happens a lot. Monza, for example, doesn't happen like this. At least when they put the newer asphalt, it was capable of, draining. Usually, the older the asphalt, and less it will drain, because the older asphalt, when there is the racing line, it becomes smoother. Okay, it becomes smoother. And smoother racing line, smoother asphalt means that the water doesn't drain down. Again, Lucas, you've been in one track, two tracks maybe. It doesn't work like that in all the tracks. And then there is the other problem, as I said. Unfortunately, we don't have a dynamic line. So maybe on the track everybody was driving the wet line and they dried up the wet line. That's a different issue again. Unfortunately, we cannot simulate that in Assetto Corsa Competizione. But that's why probably you were faster on the wet line, you see, because it got dried out sooner. The Gt4, yes, absolutely. You get much worse aero. You get overheating on the brakes also. All the stuff. It's not very important because you can see also those cars. They follow each other during 24 hours practically. They don't have big issues, but every little thing happens. Silent storm, yes, absolutely. It helps to raise the ride height as well as use less camber. But especially the ride height, depending on how much rain you have, if you want to maintain the same handling, you'd probably need to raise by 1, 2, 3 millimeters, depending how much rain it is. The rubber line and the dry line and all that, unfortunately, it's dynamic only in terms of how much there is. Okay, so you start with no, and depending on how many cars, how they drive, and how many laps they do, you get more and more rubber line, or you get more and more dry line, and so on. But unfortunately, the shape of the line is pre-rendered, and it's not. It doesn't change dynamically. Unfortunately, we couldn't simulate that. No, exactly. If you still keep braking and doing different lines on a green track, you won't have a different line. You have again the same rubber line as before, unfortunately. Lucas, I have explained to you, but it seems that you don't want to understand, or you don't want to believe me. I cannot tell you anything. Especially on the Nordschleife, there is a specific one of those specific tracks that the dry line, the racing line has much smoother asphalt. More than that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I already explained it. When you can expect AI with faster pace? Maybe it's already in 1.6.4. I think. Not sure about that. Try it again. Mesut, I just told you about the dirty air. I just explained it. Physically based tire model versus empirical tire model. Pros and cons. Well, I haven't worked a lot with a physically based tire model, so I cannot really say everything about it. I don't have the maximum experience about it. It's promising. Can you find data? Even if you get the tire and you cut it and you measure the whole, all the layers, do you know how they are made? Do you know the material, the chemistry of the material? It's not easy, first. Second, what the physical model, it's pretty, sometimes it makes me laugh. Because many people say, oh, but it's a physical-based model, so it's so much more dynamic than an empirical model, which is actually almost the contrary, almost. I mean, at least in terms of, the physical model, what it does is you put the data into a virtual dyno of a tire, and that virtual simulator starts to simulate all the possible conditions of the tire. So it starts to flex, load it, slide it. It does all that, and it generates an unbelievably dense and big amount of lookup table. And then you get that lookup table already done, and you put it into your real-time simulator. And so what you're driving on the so-called physical model is an extremely big lookup table. Nothing is dynamic because it's already all inside the lookup table. Okay? And every time you need to change something, you need to redo the whole simulation, which takes a lot of time. And especially in things like tire modeling that you need to understand the differences on the changes you do. If you have to wait half an hour or 1 hour to redo the whole big lookup table, in the meantime, you forgot your muscle memory of what you felt before, you know. So that for me is a problem. On the other hand, the empirical model is all equations and dynamic models, so everything can be in dynamical and you can easily add up extra things. There is a reason why we are so good at simulating the track surface influence and the brake influence on the temperature of the tire, you know, and the wetness and all that stuff, and the aquaplaning. Because we can implement on top of the tire model extra equations, okay? On the other hand, we don't get automatic results for all the conditions. We have to go and find them ourselves and see if we need to improve the equations or not. Advantage, I can tweak a number, go back and instantly try it. So the number of hours I do into testing are much higher than if I had a physical model where I should have, you know, I should wait, I don't know, 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, depending of how much time the simulation needs to generate a new tire with just a single value variation. So yeah, there are many pro and cons, many advantages and many disadvantages, but in the end, I think you can obtain similar results with all of them, you know, equally realistic. That's my idea. How come? Don't call me God of simulation. I'm so ignorant. You know, there are other people out there that they are so much better than me. I'm just trying to learn and give you the best I can. Yes, Jake, there is something that we would like to do. It takes time and a lot of testing, and we didn't have time to do it until now, so I cannot give you an data or even when it might happen. Might not even happen if we find many problems. Thanks, Dancing Machine. Thanks, Gutisera. Very glad that you liked the answer. Oh my God, so many people today. Wow. Great, thank you guys. Okay guys, I guess that's it. I don't know if you have any other questions. You know, hey Gray, thanks, and Steve, thanks for subscription, guys. Thanks for following. And Marek, sorry guys, I forgot you. Junior, and Andre Elix, and Pavel. Oh, so many people I forgot. Sorry guys. Crew chief. I've saw your Madagascar request, mate. I will try to tell my colleagues and see if we can, you know, input into the game for the next update, maybe. What physics changes would be made to bump stop? It would be nice to make them critically damped in their own way, in a different way than what they are now. I think it will make a difference. Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't know that. Yeah, I will clean it. Sorry, guys. Oh, now I'm ashamed. Sì, Fabri, cercherò possibilmente settimana prossima o fra 2 settimane di farlo anche in italiano questo perché mi sembra un bel argomento. Brakes, maybe we should do dedicated only for brakes. It's not very long, but it will need, 20, 30 minutes to talk about it, and it's a little bit late now. Some of that part in the dev blog should be explained, but I don't know up to how much of this. Sorry, Hausen, I didn't exactly understand what you mean. The braking power is very low. The time K, I don't understand the time K you have to be with the brake pedal. Is it very high? If you can rephrase that. Oh, Belfers. Oh, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys. Tonight, hey, thank you so much. Any endurance race? No, I had lots of invitations, but honestly, I'm feeling a little bit tired lately because we do work a lot and we are preparing, for the British GT. There are many cars, so they need lots of presets, BOPs, and everything. Hey, Massimiliano, thanks, mate, for the follow. And also many things happening in family, good things, but I'm a little bit tired to do another long endurance, so maybe I will do a couple of smaller races. Why the Porsche, for example, is so hard? Ciao Tiziano! On the curbs. Well, first of all, you have so much weight at the rear. And weight at the rear means that, the rear wants to jump, and having the rear jumping is uncomfortable. Also, because the rear is so heavy, you need stiffer suspension at the rear. And stiffer suspension makes the rear jump even more, And again, heavier rear, remember the hammer example, wants to rotate and go forward. So again, you have a rear that has issues when you go over the curbs. While, for example, a car that has a front engine has more weight at the front, it's inherently much more stable over the curbs. Yeah. Those are the main reasons. There are also other reasons. It is possible to have the Porsche react properly, but then probably you gain too much drag and you lose like 10 kilometers per hour at the straight, which is not good. No, we are not having a safety car future, because as I said, it's too much money involved, because you need to take the license for the safety car. You need to pay the 3D artist. You need to pay the developer to make it. Too much time, too much things to test, and then when do you use it? Almost never, because when a car is stopped, it's automatically transport or it's just hit esks. So you use it for what, 1 second, 5 seconds of time. In reality, safety car is there because you need to slow down the car so that the marshals can work, can get out a damaged car from the circuit. So in the meantime, you do 1, 2, 3 laps and so on. So because of all of that, it doesn't really make sense for us. I know it would be great. I would love it, honestly. but logistically, as I said, and economically, it doesn't make sense to make it. Yeah, what Neil said about the channels. Yeah. Well, some legals have already organized and do full course yellow themselves. They have real stewards, and when something happens and they think it's worth it, they will tell to the in the chat, full course yellow in 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and everybody has to slow down first gear, pit limiter, and everybody goes with the pit limiter like that, and then they would say, green light in 10 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and everybody goes again. So it's easy to organize a legal to do it if you want to. Change brake ducts. Yes, this is something we are considering. Let's see if it doesn't provoke big problems. Yeah. I don't know about that, like a guy. I have to ask the colleagues. I don't know about that, unfortunately. All right, guys. I think that's enough. It's already half an hour past midnight. I hope you enjoyed tonight. And I hope you also enjoying the new version. And see you next time for some races. I have to tell you guys, I will have to do the same live stream also in Italian, because my Italian friends really would like to learn about that. Also, at some point next week or after next week, I will do it in Italian. But normal car. So thank you, everybody. You have been so many tonight. This is really, really nice to know that you guys are so interested about technical stuff. I really like it. And as usual, I will cut the whole stream in smaller pieces, and I will, public. I will make them public in the following days. Right? So thank you again so much. Thank you for the support. This channel is going better and better and better. And what can I say? You guys are great. So see you next time. Cheers. Bye.